Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Ask Amy. It's great to see you again. Great to be back, and hopefully my power doesn't go out like it did last week during our question. But luckily, I was at the end, and I took that as a sign to just wrap it up and move on. So today's question is a great one. It comes from Dan, who is a psychologist, and he has a question about helping his client. I'll just read the question. But I do want to say, I know a lot of you listening maybe are practitioners, psychologists, coaches, whatever you might do. And it's really great to get a feel for this understanding and how to kind of help a client or another person get a feel for it themselves. And so that's what Dan's question is about. But the way we'll kind of speak to this is for everyone. So there is no, here's how you help someone else see it. That could be separate from the seeing it part, if that makes sense. So Dan's question for his client has a specific issue that he's dealing with, and Dan's wondering, how can I best help him? But for everyone listening, whether you work with people or not, the answer is the same. It's about us seeing it in a deeper, clearer way ourselves and being able to point someone else in that direction. So listen up. If you've ever had any kind of habitual thought or any experience, thought, feeling, whatever, that feels really personal, that really feels like it's holding you back, this question is going to be really relevant for you. So Dan says, "Hi, Amy. As a clinical psychologist, I very much appreciated learning from your written materials and your videos. My question relates to the application of the 3 principles to sexual fantasies and impulses. I'm currently working with a client who's been plagued for many years with unwanted but compelling sexual fantasies. He feels that his sexual preferences and fantasies do not reflect his values, and therefore he would never want to act on them. When I've suggested that his fantasies are a product of thought, he's responded that the thoughts are connected to physical sensations that are very hard to ignore. Moreover, after years of therapeutic work, he continues to feel unable to form a healthy, comfortable sexual identity or engage in healthy sexual relationships. Can you offer some guidance on how I might apply the 3 principles in my work with this client?" It's a great question. So first, Dan, I'm really glad that you're looking in this direction. And this type of issue, this understanding of our mind, how our mind works and where our experience comes from is helpful for so many things. But I think for an issue like this, it's just spot on, because what's going on here is your client is having some thinking and he feels it. He feels it physically and emotionally, and he's really thinking about it, obviously. He's really kind of caught up in it, and it feels personal in some way or meaningful because it doesn't fit with his values, and it's creating all this conflict. And that's how our experience feels. It feels personal. It feels meaningful. It feels physical and emotional. That's just the way that life shows up through us, right? That's just the way the system works. It's a really, really well-made movie. So we're always feeling our thinking coming to life, and it feels like all of those things, it feels like it's us. It feels like it's ours, like we're thinking it. But this is one of the things that this understanding has been so helpful for me and a lot of my clients in seeing is that the thinking that shows up, thought, this bigger power of thought that brings experience to life within us, it's not personal. It's an impersonal power. And the stuff that shows up, so the specific thoughts, the specific feelings, cravings, urges, whatever it might be, sexual fantasies, the specific form that thought takes, well, that's the specific form that thought is taking, but that too isn't really ours. It's not like we're doing that. It's not like, at least this is how I see it, it's not like we're sitting around thinking that. Clearly, he doesn't want to be thinking that at all. It doesn't even align with his values. Well, that makes sense to me because he's not doing this. It's thought showing up through him, coming to life. So I think to kind of start there, and for everyone too, to sort of get that feel for how that works. Like, oh, I'm paying attention to the specific thoughts I'm paying attention to what I'm thinking and how it feels and what it all means and is it congruent with my values? And that's going to be a mess. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You know, you're going to get all kinds of stuff. But what if we look a little deeper and see that thought, like there is just thought showing up, and the specifics aren't anything we need to get too caught up in. So it's more seeing that we think and that our experience is made of our moment to moment thinking than it is seeing what we think. Because again, seeing that it isn't ours. It's an energy that takes shape within us and is brought to life, and then it changes. Things get a lot easier that way. You tend to feel a lot more relaxed. You tend to have a lot more freedom from getting caught up in and dissatisfied with and judging and worried about what you're thinking. It's not what you're thinking, it's that you're thinking. So I think of like the ocean. You know, imagine an ocean with all of these waves. I mean, the ocean is the ocean, right? And waves are a specific form that might take shape from the ocean. The wave is ocean too. It's just the ocean manifest into a specific shape. And it might be a big wave and it might be a little wave. But what those waves do is they just come up by a force of nature. We don't have to think the waves into creation. We don't think our thoughts into creation. It moves through us, not by us or from us as much as through us, just like waves on an ocean. So this force of nature takes the ocean, it works through the ocean, and these waves take shape, and they look like things, and we can point them out. Look at that wave, and there's a small wave, and there's a big wave. But all waves are still just ocean, taking a temporary form. And they crash on the shore, and they leave some stuff behind sometimes, maybe some washed up seashells, or maybe some of that foamy bubble stuff. But even that, it's all temporary. So the waves take this form. It looks so big, and that's where we want to look. And then it crashes on the shore and then turns back into ocean. And all that stuff that's left, that's going to be gone soon too. That just goes right back out with it. And that's kind of how our thinking works. So when we're paying attention to, oh my gosh, this fantasy popped in my head again, that's us looking at one specific wave for a moment, and it's normal and it's innocent and it's human, it's what we do. But for a moment, we've completely lost sight of the ocean, that there even is an ocean. We're not interested at all in how the ocean works. We're looking at this one little wave and we're judging it. And we're saying, you're not my wave. What are you doing here? You don't go with my values. And why are you back? And we're putting all this attention on this wave. But that wave, in a minute, is going to crash into the shore and just go turn right back into ocean. But we get caught up in that specific temporary form. So that's what I think we can start to see. It's a really, really accurate metaphor for how our own thinking works. You know, it is that we're thinking. Stuff, images, fantasies, memories, thoughts, all kinds of things are brought to life in a really real, and as your client says, very physical, very emotional way sometimes. But they're temporary. But then they go back and they go back into this formless hole, kind of like the ocean, you know, they go back in, they lose their temporary form. And the more we can look at the process and how that works and see that it isn't about us, the less caught up we get in the specifics. Because really, I mean, a sexual fantasy is no different than a desire to have a drink, than an insecurity at work, than a thought about, hey, have I let the dog out lately? It's all thought. It's all wave. It's all wave. It's all the what we're thinking. But what's really powerful for people is to see more about the that we're thinking. So he says, again, I know your client says, when you suggest that the fantasies are a product of thought, he responds that thoughts are connected to physical sensations that are very hard to ignore. Yeah, he's right, of course. We all know this, right? But I hear people, and I kind of hear it in him maybe, you know, kind of use that as an excuse in a sense, innocently. But it's like, ooh, but you don't know my thoughts. I feel them, and my heart races, and I feel guilt and shame and all of these things that get connected to that. And again, it's like that's that big wave that hits the shore and leaves a bunch of foamy bubbles and seashells in its wake. But then those come up and those are washed right away too. It's like when we when thought is brought to life, we feel it. That's just the way the system works for everyone. Now, does he feel these thoughts more than he feels, hey, have I let the dog out recently? Yeah, he does. But that doesn't make them any more true. It doesn't make them any more personal, any more meaningful, any more valid. It's just that he's got a lot of thinking about these thoughts. He doesn't like them. He takes them personally. He thinks they're meaningful. He's confused about why they aren't there. He's seeing them as something that's interfering with his life. So that kind of puts the spotlight on it. It's like, well, of course you're going to feel that in a big way. And of course, when one little inkling of a thought shows up, you might very innocently, oh my gosh, it's back. And oh no, here it is. And why me? And why is it still happening? And, it's like we just bring our spotlight out and shine it right on that. And you just want to see how it works. Again, like we can't put the spotlight away, but what puts the spotlight away is seeing this isn't me. I am not sitting here thinking this. This is thought brought to life within me, and it's going to change. Imagine a child, children have all kinds of thoughts too, but they don't take them so seriously. So that's exactly what happens with them. They feel stuff and then it changes, and it's less interfering with their life and meaningful and having the sense of following them around. So I really hope this is helpful to kind of point in a deeper direction. And if this were my client, Dan, I probably wouldn't spend a lot of time talking about the fantasies specifically. You don't have to not talk about them. You don't have to deny them or ignore them or anything like that. But looking at the form, looking at the what we're thinking, the content of his thinking, keeps him focused there, And, that's what most therapies do. That's what we've all been taught to do, me too, is we look at what someone's thinking and you help them see it differently, or you poke holes in it, or you do some mindfulness practice around it, or whatever you might do. But that's all keeps you looking right at that what you're thinking. It keeps his fantasies, which is his big problem, right on his mind. So I think the more, and you'll see, you already do, the more you just let your own intuition guide you as you're with him, the more it'll be obvious that, poking around in these specific thoughts probably isn't all that helpful. It probably doesn't leave him feeling all that great. It magnifies it in his head. Let's look in a different place. Let's look at how healthy he is. Let's look at that we're all thinking all the time. And whether that thought brought to life is a disturbing sexual fantasy, or whether it's a thought about what's for lunch, or have I let the dog out, it's all the same. It really, truly is all the same. It's just what we make of it and our misunderstanding and fear of it turns it into something somewhat different. So, for all of you who work with clients, I hope this is helpful and you can see things in this conversation here that'll help you in your work. And for all of us listening, hey, what do y'all think? I won't even tell you what was going through my mind last night, but what I have going for me is I know that I wasn't thinking it. It didn't feel like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? That I was obsessed with these crazy, that at 3 o'clock in the morning, all these thoughts were flooding my head. No, it felt like that's what was showing up. And there's a huge, huge difference in that. So thank you for listening. Send your questions to AskAmy at thelittleschoolofbigchange.com, and I'll see you back here next week.